I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 99, How to Prevent Emotional Overwhelm. Your life does not have to revolve around your husband's pornography addiction. You are not defined by his choices or by what he sees on a screen. You are not just the porn addict's wife. You are so much more. In this podcast, I'm going to teach you how to go from handling it to healed, because I've been where you are and you don't have to stay there. My name is Jolene Wynn. I'm a member of the LDS faith, a certified life coach, and a wife of a former porn addict. And this is a podcast for the porn addict's wife. Good morning, my ladies. How are you? Happy Monday. I am bringing this podcast to you a few hours later than normal. As you can hear, my voice is a little off. I am very sick, and I fell asleep last night at 6:30. Before all of my children, before anybody in the house, I came home from my sister's. We had dinner at my sister's, Sunday dinner, and I came home and I fell asleep, and I woke up this morning. And so I did not record this podcast for you yesterday. And so I am recording it this morning, and hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm trying really hard not to cough in the middle of this, but hopefully I can bring this to you guys. I'm actually super excited. Here's what should have happened. I should have taken my own advice, okay, that I'm going to give you in this podcast. And I had this idea for this podcast last week in the middle of the week, and I was so excited about it. I was like, I should just record this early because I'm so excited. And I said, no, I have plenty of time this weekend. I have so much to do this week. I've already scheduled to record it on Sunday night. I don't need to record it early. It's no problem. Well, now here we are. It's Monday morning, and I was sick and I'm losing my voice. So I should have just listened to myself and recorded it earlier, but I will still try to do it justice. And if you guys just listen hard through the raspiness, you guys are going to hear an incredible message, okay? I struggled, honestly, giving a name to this podcast because the concept that I'm going to teach you is the tool that I'm going to teach you is not what the podcast is called, right? It's how to actually handle it. And so I knew the tool that I wanted to teach, but I wanted to bring it to you in a way that you would see how you could apply it immediately just from the title. And so that's how I was thinking this morning of how to prevent emotional overwhelm. Okay, let's talk first about what emotional overwhelm is, even though I'm sure most of us have felt it at one point or another, right? Most of us have felt a point where we can't take any more, right? You guys know what I'm saying? It's like we reach kind of a breaking point. We hit an emotional wall. We're going, especially as the wife of a porn addict, there's so much emotion that we don't know how to deal with, that we are just powering through and doing the grinding and trying to just get things done. And I think powering through is probably the biggest phrase that I hear that I connect with, that most of my clients connect with, is we're doing the powering through, right? But eventually we reach the point where we can't power through anymore. It's like everything shuts off. Like you cannot physically and emotionally take in anymore, right? And that's what I feel like is emotional overwhelm. We reach a point where we are overwhelmed. We feel overwhelmed with emotion, and we feel like we've reached our max emotional capacity. So today, I want to teach you a tool that will enable you to, if you put it in practice, it will enable you to prevent getting into those situations, getting to a place where you reach an emotional overwhelm. Okay? Now, each of us have a different emotional overwhelm level. It's like each of us have a capacity for different amounts of emotion. Okay, I've talked about this before on the podcast way back when, very early on in the podcast, I was talking about, what was I saying? You guys, my brain is not working today, but I was talking about the amount of pain tolerance. That's what I was calling the emotional pain tolerance. If you guys haven't listened to that episode, go listen to it. That's what it's called, emotional pain tolerance. We all have a different level of emotional pain tolerance that we have. Just like pain, physical pain tolerance. Some people have very high levels of pain tolerance, physical pain tolerance, and some people have kind of low levels of physical pain tolerance. Same emotionally. Some of us have very high levels of emotional pain tolerance. Some of us have lower levels of emotional pain tolerance. Doesn't matter, there's not one that's right or wrong, but each of us are going to reach our emotional overwhelm at a different point. And it doesn't matter. It's not based on the circumstances, right? What would overwhelm one person emotionally doesn't overwhelm another person emotionally. I have so many kids. Here's an example. I have so many kids. I have 5 kids, and I have so many people tell me all the time, oh my gosh, I could never have 5 kids. That would just be too overwhelming. For me, it's not, right? I have a different threshold for what, I don't know what to call that, child overwhelm. I have a very high threshold for child overwhelm. So I can be around a lot of kids. I can have a lot of kids, and it doesn't overwhelm me. Not because of the number of kids. As we know, that's a circumstance, but my thoughts about it, right? So today, the tool that I want to teach you is actually a tool that I was learning about on a coaching call. I am part of a business group, and I was getting coached, and this was actually someone else brought this to the call, and this was the answer that they gave. You guys ready? Here's the secret to preventing emotional overwhelm. It's very simple. Be proactive, not reactive. Okay? Proactive, not reactive. And that's what we're going to talk about today. If you can nail down this one tool, it will prevent you from reaching an emotional overwhelm in your life. Okay? And let's talk a little bit about why and what it is to be proactive rather than reactive. Okay? The reason that most of us go through life being reactive, right? We go through life and we experience circumstances that we have thoughts about that create feelings, and that's when we deal with those. Now, that may seem very normal, and it is, but here's what I want to tell you. It's not that you can prevent circumstances from happening in your life, or even that you can prevent emotions or feelings from happening in your life. You can't, okay? That's life. You're going to have circumstances that you will have thoughts about that are going to create feelings. You are supposed to have feelings, ladies. You are supposed to have positive ones and negative ones. What I'm teaching you guys today is not an attempt to get you guys to avoid negative emotions. What I'm teaching you guys today is an attempt to teach you how to prepare for those negative emotions so that they aren't so overwhelming. Okay? Because here's what normally happens. What normally happens, like I was saying, we have a circumstance that we have thoughts about that then create feelings. And usually it's that inability to handle those feelings that creates emotional overwhelm. Okay? That's even why it's called emotional overwhelm. It's not circumstantial overwhelm. It's emotional overwhelm. It's the emotions that you feel because of the thoughts that you're thinking, you guys, my brain today, sorry, the emotions that you're feeling because of the thoughts that you're thinking about the circumstance that you're going through. That is what creates emotional overwhelm. It's not the circumstance, ladies. It's your inability, or it's not just your inability. Most of the time it's the ignorance, right? You haven't even been taught how to handle emotions and how to process emotions in a healthy way, which leads to feeling overwhelmed, because all we end up doing is compounding our emotions until we hit that emotional brick wall, right? We take on and we power through until we can't do it anymore. It's impossible. And that's when we have a breakdown, right? Okay, so the way that we combat this is to stop waiting for circumstances to happen. Stop waiting to hit that brick wall before you stop compounding your emotions. That's reacting. Okay. What I want you guys to learn how to do is how to be proactive instead. And what that looks like is not avoiding all circumstances. What that looks like is learning how to feel your feelings, learning how to manage your brain. And if you guys learn how to do that, then you are proactively preparing yourself to handle your emotions. If you learn how to manage your brain, if you learn how to manage your emotions, how to feel your feelings, how to process your emotions, then when you have a circumstance that you have a lot of thoughts about that create a lot of feelings, then it doesn't get you to that emotional brick wall because you have all the tools to handle it. The problem is that most of us are reacting. Most of us are not able to handle all the emotions that come up because we don't know how. And then we feel like we're scrambling, right? This is when you feel like you're drowning. right? I've heard there's a comedian and he says, people ask me what it's like to have children. He's like, imagine that you're drowning and then someone hands you a baby. That's what it's like to be a parent. That's what I feel like most of us are trying to do emotionally, especially in regards to our husband's pornography addiction, right? We have all of these emotions that we aren't prepared for that suddenly we're trying to react to and handle along with all of the day-to-day that we were handling already, which was already stressful. Right? We were already at a very high emotional overwhelm, and then we get thrown into this circumstance that creates so many more emotions, and all of a sudden we feel like we're drowning. The reason that we feel like we're drowning is because we're reacting. And the way that you prevent this from happening in the future is by being proactive. Now, I want you guys to congratulate yourselves, because not only are you already doing this by listening to this podcast, but you're light years ahead because of what you're already learning on this podcast. But being proactive about this requires intention. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. So now that you know what it means to be proactive and why it's beneficial, it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? Right? Well, first, number one is you need to set aside what that looks like for you. You need to identify what causes your emotional overwhelm. And again, your brain's going to want to say, oh, it's these circumstances. It's not the circumstances, ladies. You need to look at what it really is. Is it that you avoid all your feelings? Is it that you don't know how to feel your feelings? Is it that you feel like you want someone to talk to about your feelings and you feel like you don't have that? Is it that you feel like you think you're feeling your feelings, but then you must not be because you keep getting into these cycles? Is it that you struggle with anger? Is it like identify certain emotions that you feel like are the main pain points for you, right? What does my brain keep going back to? What is the main emotion that I keep coming back to that I feel like I can't get rid of? Is it worthlessness? Is it rejection? Is it distrust? What is it that I keep coming back to that I feel like I can't get past? Okay? That's how your brain is going in a pattern, and that's what we need to fix, right? I want you to be really specific with your brain, and I try to identify what it is specifically emotionally that you keep coming back to. What is creating your emotional overwhelm? Again, not a circumstance. The answer is not a circumstance. The answer is an emotion, okay? And how would you solve it? And this is where the really fun part comes, okay? Number one, like I said, you guys are already doing amazing because you're already listening to a podcast. That is very, very proactive of you. Congratulations. Okay, so you're already a step up. The second thing that you guys can do is if you want to do more, I want you to set aside time or money or whatever it is, space for you to continue to proactively do this. That might look like getting a therapist. It might look like joining my coaching program, which I highly recommend. It might look like reading books about self-development or about pornography addiction or whatever it is. Okay. That might be what it looks like for you. It might look like looking up other podcasts. It might look like setting aside 1 hour every week to journal. Okay. What is it that you can do that helps you process your emotions, that is going to help you proactively look at what's happening now in order to prevent yourself from getting to emotional overwhelm later? This is where you have to use your higher brain, your prefrontal cortex, instead of your lower brain, because your lower brain says, well, I think I'm actually doing okay right now. It's not actually a problem yet. I'll deal with it later. Now, most of the time, if you've coached with me, you know that I am a huge proponent of not worrying about things until they happen. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about not worrying about things. I'm talking about proactively preparing for things. Okay? And that's different. Worry is not useful. Worrying about things is not useful. That's not what we're doing. What I'm saying is you proactively prepare yourself, learn tools in advance so that when you get to a place where things get higher and more unstable emotionally, you already know what to do. So many of you struggle with relapses. I was talking about this on my Instagram stories the other day. I put a poll up. So many of you are not confident in how to handle relapses. This is why. It's because you've constantly been reacting to relapses. What I want to encourage you to do is get proactive, to start preparing now so that if a relapse happens, you are confident in your ability to handle it because you already have the tools in place to do so. You already know how to feel your feelings. You already know how to process your emotions. You already know how to manage your brain. Most of us, the reason that we feel like we're drowning in emotional overwhelm, I'm going to say it over and over, is because we are reacting to our circumstances, because a relapse happens and then we crash, because we're dealing with so many emotions that we don't know how to feel, so many thoughts that we don't know how to reprogram, so many things we don't know how to process. And so what we end up doing is we shove it down and we just power through until we can't anymore. And that is not an emotional pattern that you can continue for the rest of your life, which is why you guys are listening to this podcast, right? That's why I do what I do, is to teach you how to process your emotions, how to reprogram your brain. Okay. And that's going to look like proactivity is going to look like doing it right now, even though it doesn't seem to be a problem right now. Okay, let's do another example. Like being proactive instead of reactive looks like going to the gym and eating healthy even if you're not overweight, even if you don't have diabetes. That's what being proactive about your health looks like, right? Staying healthy, treating your body right, being healthy, even though you don't have a diagnosis that requires you to do so. Being reactive is not taking care of your body and then you get a diagnosis and then you try to switch things around. It's much, much harder because now you have years of habit. You probably have weight that now you have to lose in order to get to a place that you're even healthier. You have to completely change all of the eating habits that you've been having for years that have gotten you to the place where you are. It's much more difficult. But our brain in this moment, if we're not overweight or we don't have diabetes, it's much easier for our brain to say, yeah, but that's not a problem for me, so I don't need to worry about that. Okay, now again, that's just notice how your brain says, I don't need to worry about that. Well, it's true, you don't need to worry about it, but that doesn't mean you can't take care of yourself now to put you in a place where you prevent yourself from getting into an emotionally overwhelming place later. Does that make sense, ladies? Am I explaining this okay? Again, my brain is a little foggy, so I apologize if this isn't the most clear episode. But again, I want to encourage you, ladies, to use your prefrontal cortex and think about how you can proactively prepare yourself for the things that you are worried about handling. Okay, like I said, I was talking on my stories about this. So many of you are worried about relapses. So many of you don't know how to navigate trust. How many of you worry about all the thoughts and feelings you feel every time your husband touches you or wants to kiss you? How many of you worry or how many of you feel that overwhelm and that anxiety every time he sits down and you look over and he's on his phone? How many of you feel that overwhelming anxiety every time you're watching a show on Netflix or on whatever your favorite TV watching app is, and there comes a sexy woman on TV or a sex scene or something like that, and you have all of those feelings? I want to teach you, come join me in coaching. I want to teach you how to prepare yourself ahead of time so that those emotionally overwhelming moments aren't even a thing. This is how we even prevent them. That's why I named this podcast what I did, because the key to preventing emotional overwhelm is being proactive, getting your brain and your emotions to a place where you know how to handle both. That is what makes you able to live your life on purpose. This is what I talk about when I mean that you can create your life rather than live at the effect of it. Living at the effect of your life is reacting, right? That's when you feel like you're living at the effect of your husband's addiction. That's the hamster wheel, ladies. That's what that is. Being proactive is when you get off the hamster wheel and you start creating your life. You start acting intentionally. And it might go against every instinct in your brain because your brain's going to say, well, we don't have to worry about that right now, or that's not a problem yet, or I'm already dealing with so much else, I can't take this on right now. Ladies, that's a big one, right? We feel like we're already handling so many things. We can't take on another thing. But what if being proactive is the thing that would make everything else easier? Ladies, learning how to manage your brain and feel your emotions, those tools that I teach you aren't just applicable to your husband's addiction. They're applicable to every thought and every feeling. Every time you feel overwhelmed with your children, every time you feel stressed out because of your job, every time you feel insecure when you look in a mirror, those have nothing to do with your husband's addiction. And yet those are all thoughts and feelings that you feel that you can learn how to manage if you come coach. Practice being proactive. Give yourself the time, the money, the space, whatever it is to do so. Make a plan today. This is going to be your homework, ladies. Make a plan today on how you are going to proactively put yourself ahead of your thoughts and your feelings. Remember, I told you that you need to identify what is causing your emotional overwhelm, and it's not a circumstance. So identify what that is and then make a plan to proactively go after it so that you can prevent it from causing you emotional overwhelm in the future. If you want to come coach with me, I will help you do this. I know this is it's kind of an abstract concept, especially if you're new to the podcast, okay? But I want you guys to really just allow this to sink in, because this is what I get asked on so much. How do I prevent myself from getting to a place where I feel like I can't go one more day? How do I get to a place where I'm okay if he relapses? Not that I'm okay with it like morally, but I know I will be able to handle it if he relapses. How do I get myself to an emotionally healthy place? This is how, ladies. You be proactive. You have to start taking the control of your life. You have to be smarter than your own brain, and you have to start using your brain for you rather than letting it run on autopilot. Okay? Ladies, you can do this. It's going to take some tough love. It's going to take some tough love from me and for you to be tough on yourself. Tough love, guys. Use sympathy, but notice where you're keeping yourself stuck. And then make a plan to change it and start today. I love you, ladies, very much. I hope you guys all have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. All right, ladies, if you are loving what you are learning on the podcast, I want to invite you to come join my coaching program. This is where we take it to the next level, and we actually start applying and learning the how of moving forward. This podcast has taught you the what, and the coaching program is where you're going to learn the how. This is where you learn how to actually start moving forward, process all of that pain that you feel, and let it go once and for all. If you are ready to finally move forward and stop living a life that revolves around your husband's pornography addiction, then I want to invite you to come join me today. Just head to my website, jolenewind.com, and sign up today. I can't wait to see you there.